Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for being here with us.
Down, Trubisky well protected, wide open. Anthony Miller slips a tackle. Miller to the end zone. Touchdown Bears.
Back to Deshaun Watson. According to colleague Tom Pelissero and myself, the Texans are now willing to listen to trade offers for Deshaun Watson. And this has been very quietly going on for some time, but it is now, I would say, a little more out in the open. And the fact that the Houston Texans and Deshaun Watson did have a meeting yesterday.
It was on Watson whether to show up for training camp. And then before that, everybody thought it was on the league to determine, well, is he going to be put on the commissioner's exempt list? And as I told you last week, I did not anticipate that before the start of their training camp.
And welcome to another episode of the Turn Up For What podcast, talking your Houston Texans straight from the Great British Isles. And it was meant to be about training camp this week. It was meant to be about football, but the Watson story crops back up again. The national media are pumping the story like hell, and we're trying to get as much smoke out there as possible. Does that mean a move that's imminent? Does that mean they're trying to put a complexion on it or do a favour for one of these camps? Something kind of seems a bit off, but something may happen soon. But I think we all want closure and move on from this topic that's dominated this off-season and still hangs over this team. So the distraction mantra, or not wanting distractions of New England that Caserio may or may not have brought over, will be put to the test. And we'll find out just exactly if we'll be moving on or this will continue to be a storm hanging over the team. Don't envy David Culley, don't envy Nick Caserio being in front of the media or the players. It's going to be one topic only, and it's not going to be about football for a little bit time longer. But it certainly seems Deshaun isn't going to be suspended by the league, so he can therefore play this season. The question is this the right time to trade him? Considering if you trade him to a team, have a good season, your draft picks aren't going to be very good. So it's all unknown at this stage. But, something might happen and something might not. But we're just going to let that play out. And hopefully we can pick that one back up next week with some kind of perspective rather than in the eye of the storm right now. But here is an interview we had planned prior to that. And it's my conversation with Drew Doughtery from Texans Media. Training camp is finally here. I'm joined this week by Texans Media, Drew Doughtery. Drew, how you been, man? Been about a year now, I think. Pre-COVID.
I know, it's been too long, man. I missed you. You doing all right?
Yeah, doing all right. Life's kind of slowly getting back to normal, and football's here finally after a long off season.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Just saying, there's been a bit of a media frenzy today in terms of a certain individual who's been in the press or in the media spotlight for a whole host of reasons, football and some non. Any makings of it as I suppose the news cycle never stops with the Texans right now. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, the higher ups like Cal McNair, team chairman, CEO, he's had his statement on the topic, and as has Nick Caserio and David Culley. But Deshaun Watson still a Texan. There's stuff going on with the legal process, and he's here from what we hear. So that's all I really got to say about that. And we're looking forward to the season, and can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, well, that's it. I think it's got a long. Well, it might have a long way to go, it might not, but it certainly seems there's a lot to play out this season on many fronts. But and I suppose last week's news probably puts the game into perspective sometimes, Drew. But the passing of Greg Knapp, obviously was at the Texans a couple of years under Coombs, and what's your memories of him? Obviously, terrible accident. He's obviously bound to take on another stage of his career in New York, and what first and foremost a tragedy. But what's your kind of memories of Knapp?
Loved him. There've been a lot of great coaches, both head coaches and assistant coaches, that have come through this building, and he's one of my favorites because many, many times he'd just be walking down the hall to take care of some sort of task. And it could be in the off season. Sometimes it was during the season, but he would always stop by and plop down in my chair in my office. And I can count on one hand the number of coaches over the 13 years that I've been here that have done that. And he was just a real guy. He's a real person. He was not that those other guys aren't or weren't, but he took an interest in everyone around him, not just if you were a football player, not just if you're a football coach. And I was really sad when he left us for Oakland in 2012. Happy for the opportunity, obviously, but sad that he was leaving us because he was a great coach. I mean, he think about it, he coached Steve Young and all these other greats, and his time in Houston has not gotten a lot of notoriety. But the 2 years he was here, he coached Schaub, and Schaub put up big numbers in 2010. And then in 11, Schaub was doing pretty well, gets the injury, and he had to coach up Leinart, who only lasted a half. And then he had to coach up TJ Yates, who was a fifth-round choice, and he had a room with Jeff Garcia at one point and Jake Delhomme at one point and a few others. And the Texans were able to actually win a playoff game with a rookie quarterback who, had come from comparatively humble, a humble background. So he was a heck of a coach, heck of a person, and I'm really, really just sad by the news, like so many others who knew him even better than I did. I was just a small blip on that radar screen, but he was a great guy, a really, really great guy.
Yeah, I saw a quote from Peter King. I think it was paraphrasing here, but it said that Brock Osweiler was asked by Rick Smith, how do you get back to your Denver form? And he said, bring over
that
Greg
quote.
Knapp.
Wasn't that great?
Yeah,
bring Knapp back was what he was saying. And I can understand why Brock said that. And he was a great coach, great coach, but even better person. You hear that. That's a cliche, I know, but it's absolutely the case with him.
Yeah, taken too early, I think, Drew. I think it's a strange time, I suppose, in the league right now. And you saw a former Texans coach, Rick Dennison, potentially not lose his job, but there's discussions about whether he'll be able to carry out his job. I suppose it's probably a dynamic that I don't know how long we'll have to all live with, but it's certainly, I think it's just a strange time to be in and around football team when you've got this whole macro strain of a virus that, it's still, we're still living with it in some form or another.
Yeah, no doubt. You're right on about that. It's weird times in which we're living, but you got to just adjust and roll with it and go with the flow. And you want everybody to be healthy and safe and all that other stuff. So I'm vaccinated. I've gotten tested, and I'll be tested again. And I just hope we get football with full stadiums and safe people and a healthier populace, as it goes on. It's been tough. Wasn't fun for anybody, but there's far worse things happening than, job inconveniences and stuff like that. But it's something that hopefully we'll keep coming out of soon enough, right?
Yeah, well, I've had both mine, but I think mine aren't FDA approved yet. So, and there's no travel, still no travel, but corridors set up between here in the US. So yeah, it's all kind of up in there. Normally at this time of year, you'd have the flights booked, you'd have the schedule circled, and you'd have everything all ready to go. But it's just uncertainty is the new constant, I suppose.
No doubt.
And and coming out of a year last year when that affected you, what was the biggest change did you find to your job and just generally being around the team last year with so many kind of league mandated kind of restrictions?
Last year is always going to be kind of an asterisk year for me, just because so many of these guys I still have not met. There are guys that are on the team that I've not seen in person or talked with in person, and that's such a big part of what I do. I was so disconnected from things. I didn't go to the away games, which that's a big part of just you get background information on people when you're around them in these different settings. And I didn't get any of that. And so that was odd. Watching games in my office was odd. I'd never done that before. But we had the clean feed, all 22 from the game. So I would watch the game from this chair, and it just wasn't the same. It just was not the same as going to the city and you're around the crowd and all. And there weren't crowds in many of these places too. So it was just a weird. I'll always put an asterisk by that year because it wasn't really like what I'd done before.
Yeah, and you said that about the crowds. What's the? I know it was a limited capacity, sort of 13,000 after week 4 or 5. Was it before the Vikings game? Was that the first time they had fans in?
Yeah, the first game was closed. So it was week 2 against the Ravens.
Yes, what was that like? Completely
awful.
empty.
It was awful. The team didn't play well. There was nobody there. It just didn't feel like a game. It didn't feel like – because you remember the last time you'd been in that stadium was the Buffalo Bills playoff win, which is it's one of the 4 or 5 greatest victories, I think, in team history, at least home victories. The atmosphere and what they did to come back and the excitement and everything. You went from that to what happened in week 2. It just, there couldn't be a bigger gulf, it seems, between the two experiences.
Yeah, it felt empty on the broadcast. I remember. It was late here, but that feeling was correct because it was, it was very empty. Yeah, and
multiple ways.
I remember when Deshaun missed David Johnson up the sideline on a wheel route, and you think on a normal day you might have caught him, and it just felt like it just was something missed. There was just no juice, and I suppose it was probably same with the Pittsburgh the week before when you saw JJ mic'd up, and it just feels weird with no one in the stadium. So, what would you say, Drew, is your best memory of fans in the stadium, and what kind of impact can people make? Because I always think there's a big difference between the midday noon kickoffs and the primetime ones, just in terms of like buzz early from the first whistle. But what's your kind of best memory of the impact of the fans and how much you think the team will welcome them back this year?
Yeah, probably that Bills game was one of them. The first playoff game was incredibly electric. Yeah. Earlier in that 11th season, when the team played the Falcons, that was a massive game because the Falcons were pretty good that year. TJ Yates was it was maybe his second game. I think it might have been the first game after the Jaguars game. I'm getting older. My memory's getting hazier, but I know it was like the week before the Bengals game where they clinched. And that game was really, really loud. And it came down to, there was a 4th down play where they went to the end zone and the ball got batted away. But those were huge games, and those defenses, especially back then, those defenses were really feeding off and keying off the crowd, and the players. You talk to every player and they love it. They love the energy and all that stuff that it brings. So I think the crowds play a big part in it and make things a lot better when it's full.
Yeah, and is that the thing you're most looking forward to returning to? Were you level 1 last year, so you had most access?
No, I wasn't. I couldn't go on the field. I was up in the perch that I do the pregame and the halftime.
Oh, up in the corner.
Shows.
Yeah.
So I was up there because you're not close to anybody.
Yeah.
But it'll probably be like similar. I think this year I'll be able to get down and interview players. A lot of that stuff is still up in the air, but it'll be a little different. At least in preseason, we are having games, so that means I'll be the sideline reporter.
Yep.
Still don't know if I'm in that trough or if I'm on the field. I think it's the field, but I've started getting COVID tested, so that's a sign at least. Because I didn't get tested last year on a regular basis like some of them. Okay. So the fact that I am getting tested, that shows a little something. But can't wait to see fans, because a lot of it is I've built up, relationships with some of these people that have been fans. A lot of these folks have been here with the Texans and going to games before I even got here. I didn't get here till 2009.
Yeah.
I'm from here, but I wasn't living here from about 2002 to 2009 when the Texans started. So it's fun seeing a lot of these smiling faces, and I missed it a lot last year because, we didn't have that. We didn't have the weekly radio shows that we did.
Yeah.
Which we had been doing for about a decade, at a Fuddruckers or at the Texans Grill before that. And that there was always a crew of folks. I think you've come to a few of those maybe in the past.
Yeah.
But, that's one of the things you miss because, you built up relationships with those folks too and become friends with those folks.
Yeah, just on a side note, the last time I was there was the Fuddruckers. I can't remember which location, the one near the Topgolf, but that was Jonathan Joseph was there that night. And I've not met, I've not had the chance to meet as many players you'd probably like, but obviously he just retired now, but what a great guy. And the sentiment I gave, his burger was cold by the time he finished speaking to us. He couldn't have given you more time. And I think that was just kind of probably summed up what a great guy he was.
That's who he is, man. I mean, you absolutely nailed it. I love that guy. I mean, probably the greatest free agent signing in team history.
Yeah.
You know, him and Antonio Smith. Boy, came in. We needed him like oxygen in 2011 after what the pass defense had done the year before. I mean, one of the worst ever, like in NFL history. And he came in and really helped right that ship, and then was solid and above average for a long, long time here. And just a great person, consummate pro. Win, lose, he was ready to stand and talk. You know, sad that he left. Glad that he's back. And he was back in the building about a week or two ago. It was really good to see him. It was just like nothing had changed. You know, just had a nice little 5-minute conversation about his kids and youth sports and stuff, and how it's you know, how busy he is, but great guy. And what a great career. Gosh, think about how long he lasted. Think about how tough he was. Just about it seems like every single game he had to leave the game because you know, he's like his shoulder was hurting or his, you know, something was wrong, but then he would wind up getting back in. I mean, just tough as beef jerky. And he was a great Texan, is a great Texan, and salute to a great career. But yeah, you picked up on that personal side of him. Yeah, that's who he is, man. It's a good dude. It's a really good dude.
Yeah, couldn't have gave him more time. And just such a gracious guy for somebody in you know, a privileged position in life, but you would never known it. You know, he could have been, he could have worked. He could have worked at the Fuddruckers. He was that humble. You know, he really was. It was just such a down to earth guy. So, yeah, I think we missed that. I suppose it's probably those bits, Drew, that you perhaps you get the most out of a job like yourself. I mean, you've done a lot of interviews with Where Are They Now guys, and have you got any sort of favourite memories that you'll always take? You know, if you're looking back on your career, that you'll always look back on. You know, like speaking to JJ and guys like that. Is there any sort of, you know, you got specific memories that you'll always keep with you?
Oh, yeah, like 7 years to talk. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's been fun. You know, I did starting with him, with J-Joe. I remember a few years back, I did an interview with him, and we were both wearing blankets. And you know, basically the idea was, you know, he covered receivers like a blanket. So I was playing up on that, just being a goofball. And most guys are like, I don't feel like wearing a blanket. But he was just like, okay, sure. And he just wore the blanket the whole time while we did the interview. I just did one recently. I put the article up. It should go up on the website later today, with Antonio Smith, the ninja. And I mean, that guy, when he came here, those first 5 years he was here, it was awesome. You know, very colorful player, the ninja assassin, Tonstradamus. Yeah. I mean, we had so many laughs with him. And then he went away. He got a Super Bowl ring, and he finished things up by coming back here in 2016, you know, when JJ went down with that injury. And, you know, the Texans they rounded up having a really good defense that year. And that was the Brock Osweiler year where they won the playoff game against the Raiders and then went up to New England. But, you know, Antonio, I'd forgotten he was here for 13 games. For some reason in my memory, I had him here for just like a month, but he was here for the bulk of the season. And he said he loved that experience too. He was an older guy. He wasn't, you know, a starter or anything, but some of his buddies that he had played with the first time around, like J-Joe, Kareem, Brian Cushing, they were still there. But then he had a new cast like, you know, Covington and DJ Reader. There were young guys who were sort of around his locker and his area, and he had fun sort of paying it forward, he said. So I always love that. I mean, a million Sean Cody stories. He's probably my favorite guy that I ever dealt with. Covington was one that was great. Connor Barwin. I mean, I had John Weeks, who's still here. You know, you always have fun talking with him. Yeah. The list goes on and on and on. The real list would be like, who have I not liked? And that list is, you know, minuscule, because the rest of them have predominantly been just great, you know?
Yeah. No, that's good. No, I always remember the Antonio Smith one where...
Andre, I got to throw Andre Johnson in. Love Andre.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, another guy.
What were you saying about Antonio?
No, I was just saying, remember the Antonio Smith player intro, I think is it the CBS one, and they give their high school, and he said Shaolin Temple or something. just a character. Yeah, ninja stars in his locker. Yeah, just all the stories. You know, they're all. He is. There's no hype there. That's who he is. But yeah, no, I listened to that interview you did with him, Drew, and it was you know, real characters in the team. And I don't know if we'll continue to have guys like that. You know, the different coaching regimes probably let players, you know, personalities come out a bit more than others. But yeah, no, a great guy. With some good insight in there. I suppose there's there's probably been an eventful off season. And it's probably I suppose when things are kind of being questioned from the outside, how does that affect somebody front facing like yourself in the organisation? Because we've all worked in jobs where things have gone on. You may or may not agree with what's been going on, but it's not within your realm of influence. But how have you kind of found this off season? I mean, I remember I saw briefly one of the Crown Royal water breaks, and people were kind of I think you had to sort of come out and sort of make a bit of a statement on the next one and things. And it's been the fans' kind of reactions probably mirrored a lot of the stuff that's gone on in some ways, or that's just their natural reaction because they all want this team to win.
Yeah, no,
it's
understandable. It's understandable. I mean, I work for the team, and there's a lot of people that aren't happy with what's going on. And I understand. I understand. And I know a lot of people understand that I can't talk about, coworkers. All of our checks are signed by the same guy, so I'm not going to blast a coworker or anything because that's not how it goes. But not everyone knows that, and I think that's why I said it that one time, just to make sure everyone was clear. But listen, we've had tough times around here. Last year was not fun at all. The season was not fun. I mean, 4 wins, it's awful. I've been through a 2-wins season in 2013. That was lowest of the low. There have been some other bad years as well. But, things change. And, I guess I'm old enough and I've been around long enough that I can maybe see down the line. So, yeah, it's been a tough off season for sure. Nobody's discounting that. I don't debate that at all. But, there are fun times ahead, I think. And I mean, this is just, it's mind numbing how many changes have gone on this year as far as transactions. I think we're in the 80s, the high 80s now, and it's probably going to eclipse 90 by the time we kick off. And we certainly will by the time we kick off in week 1. But, aside from the expansion year in 2002, there's never been this much turnover and this much change. And so it's been an adjustment, just trying to learn who these guys are. Many of them are not going to be here. Because you basically cleave the roster in half after that final game. But it's been tough. It sure has. But, at the end of the day, I still work in a great job. I have a great job. It's a fun job. I'm paid to talk about a football team and everything that encompasses. And it's cool.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens this year. But, I'm always going to be on the optimistic side of things.
Yeah, and I suppose, I mean, the longer you do it, I think it's infectious in any kind of sports team because, whether you're not, as you said, you're from the area, but even if you're not, I suppose you become a fan as well. So there's like a balance of, and even for me on a much smaller scale, albeit, but, trying to do this and you being a fan, but then you want to try and give a balance kind of outlook for people to not, because, and I think people get plugged down in social media and all this kind of stuff. And it snowballs things into things they're not, and and these narratives arise, and people believe in choosing what they want. But yeah, it's a funny old landscape. It's been a strange off season. It's been great. We've had some people from Sweden, Germany, Canada. We've had people all across the globe. Being on here this off season talking about how much they care about this team. So it's as I keep telling myself, it's all cyclical, and the good times will inevitably come. It's just the nature of the business, right? And I suppose we're at training camp or on the eve of, not pretty much. What's your kind of memories of training camp? What does the schedule look like for you? Because I suppose it's probably in some ways almost busier than the regular season.
It can be, aspects of it for sure. And I'm glad we're having one with, it's going to be like years past. I mean, there's obviously some major differences because of what happened with the pandemic, but there are going to be fans back at camp. There's going to be sort of a regular schedule of being out there and being able to be out there. Because last year, essentially, we did the show here in the building, a pregame show and start of camp show in the building, and you miss most of it and then get out for just like 20 minutes. But now we'll be out there and it'll be nice. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, just kind of like a return, knock on wood, to normality is what we're most excited about. And I think this offensive line is going to be better than last year, and I think it's going to be much improved. And just by that alone, that gives me a lot of optimism on the whole, because when you're able to block better and run the ball better and protect better, I mean, it's going to do so much, and it's going to make a lot around the offense, I think, better. And perhaps I'm being a simpleton, and perhaps I'm being a homer when I say that, but I just think because this offensive line is going to be so much better, I'm pretty optimistic for, this team being able to do okay and be okay and be better than it was last year.
Yeah, you said on one of your segments, showing my loyalty in terms of listening to the content here, but you said in one of your segments, the people are going to be for a surprise at the offensive line. I think maybe you said if people are still listening, then they'll pick that one up. Can you elaborate on that at all, or are you keeping that?
Yeah, there's been a guy or two that he's not one of the more notable names, but he's actually really played well, and
right.
At least what he's done in the meeting rooms and what he's done on the practice field when you're not, going full speed. So you got to put that asterisk by it. And I think, as you know, I'd said that in the thing, but this guy's grown by leaps and bounds, and he's going to really kind of make some people be surprised when you see, I think, where he winds up.
Right.
So and that alone is a big cause of optimism for me, because he's just one component on this line that I think is going to be a lot better. Another big part of that is the coach, James Campen. I think he's really going to integrate some things. I think the center, Justin Britt, is going to be quite a leader and quite an addition. So I'm pumped, man. I really can't wait to see what this offensive line can do and how that trickles over to the rest of the offense, which I think in turn will make things a little easier on what the defense has to do.
Yeah, and I suppose as the return of preseason games, and a lot of people dismiss them, but I find them good. I mean, probably again showing some tendencies here, but who's going to be the fourth or fifth string linebackers is interesting. And you get to see these guys, and a lot of them it's probably less so for the Texans this year because they're more veteran players. But I always find that the preseason you've got young guys who this might be their only chance in the league, and they're fighting for every last breath out there. And you saw that bit on Hard Knocks, but I suppose that must be like that example you said in the offensive line. That must be the most interesting part, I think, for everybody close to the team, because you're seeing these guys, especially if you know them or some of them. They've got a chance to make the roster.
And for guys like you and me, I mean, this is going to be a great learning experience because, most years you go into the preseason and you know who your starters are. They're not going to play much. You're not going to see much of them. And this year, with such turnover, it's going to be fast. And with a new head coach, how does he do things as far as divvying up playing time? How much does he hold certain guys out? I mean, just that alone, you'll learn a lot about where guys stand. And then once you get on the field, seeing what they do. I mean, if you follow this team, you're always paying attention. You're always watching the preseason. But if you follow this team and that's your living, that's your job, you're going to really have to follow what happens, throughout the entirety of these games, because there are so damn many new faces that, we got to figure out what is what and who's who, and how these different combinations on both sides of the ball are going to shake out. Because, I mean, think about how many new faces have come through. I mean, it's almost 50, 60 guys. So, and like I said, it gets cleaved down to 53 at the end of the day. And I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah, and just obviously not been made official yet, but reportedly, put the asterisk next, they made a trade for another wide receiver. I think it just shows you the Nick Caserio's approach to, iteratively trying to improve the roster. What did you make of the reported wide receiver coming off Chicago, Anthony Miller?
I saw Caserio on Friday, just passed him in the hall, and we're chit-chatting. I was like, you making a move? You doing anything? And he's like, What, me? He's got, just like kind of joking. And then sure enough, a day later.
Right, okay. I was going to say, he's not got, I thought he's had a better poker face than that. They had him making a move face.
Yeah. So he's always, got some move, and there's something chambered in the gun there to get going. Yeah. But we'll see, once it all gets announced and everything. I mean, I think Caserio is intent on, if he thinks, the 90th spot on the roster there's somebody better that can be at 90, he's going to do that. He's going to add that person. If it's at 67, he's going to keep adding. I mean, he's an incremental thing. He just wants his team to get better. And I think that's what the idea is, bringing in a guy like that he thinks can bolster competition perhaps. I think that's the ultimate end game there. He just wants to get a more competitive roster, better roster than he had.
Yeah, and I've heard you guys talk about this, so I'm going to steal a question from you guys, but do you have any subterranean guys on your watch that you think are going to come in and maybe, I know you mentioned one, the offensive line. Have you got any other guys that you've watched grow in the building and you think that guy's ready now?
Yeah. So I mentioned Britt, Philip Lindsay, I would say, but I think everybody thinks he's going to be pretty good, but he's been great since he got here. Keep an eye on the safety, Jonathan Owens. He might be somebody that contributes in a way. I'm not saying he's going to pick off 15 passes and, free safety blitz for like 12 sacks, but I think he can be somebody that's pretty good. So keep an eye out for Jonathan Owens. That's kind of one of the names that I'm intrigued by and in that regard. And then as far as the draft picks, I get the feeling that Roy Lopez, the defensive tackle from Arizona, is going to come in, do a good job at that job, which is not glamorous, which is not one that generates a lot of stats. But I think he's one of those guys that can come in, play, contribute at a good level immediately, and you might see him around here for a while.
Yeah, I just put out some clips when we drafted him, and there was one where there was a pile at the goal line against USC, and nobody pushes the pile up. Obviously, you can see his big blonde ponytail, but you just see him drive right through the pile, and you thought if he can learn how to use that leverage consistently, you've probably got a player there.
Folds guys in half, and he kind of reminds me a little bit of. There's like certain aspects, not as a player, but certain aspects of him. Reminds me of Sean Cody. He's from the Pac-12. He's got a few other similarities to him. But Cody, he's a color analyst on USC football games for the radio broadcast, and he said that guy's good. Yeah, he can play. He played really well against the Trojans, so he had his eye on him, and he liked that pick as well for the Texans.
Well, hope so, because I think we're definitely going to have to find gems as we start trying to build out depth on this roster.
No doubt.
And of all the road trips, that's probably my favourite bit of following this team is the road trips. You get to go to a place you've never have been. You've never gone standing in a bar talking to people that you've never met, in a million lifetimes. What's your kind of big road trip that you've got circled on the calendar this year?
Well, I love that we're just traveling in general. In the preseason, I think my favorite stadium to visit is Green Bay. I mean, league-wide, that's my favorite one. So I'm pumped that we get to see that at least in the preseason. Regular season, I love Miami, man. I wish we played there at night so I could go hang out on the beach in the morning, but I'll take it. I still like going to Miami. And then let's see, what else? Always love going to Indianapolis. It's a fun trip.
Yeah.
And I would probably say Miami and Indianapolis are the two of the ones that I'm looking. And San Francisco is cool to go to California. I like California.
Yeah, but Buffalo was the desired one on this one for me. But as I said, we're still in limbo right now. I think maybe if it gets pushed back to timescales, then I think Miami's always a winner. I think, right? I think.
Oh yeah.
You can
carve out some extra time before and after, so you can get on the beach, man.
Yeah, and then next year I wanted to ask you which one, because everybody will be going to Vegas, so that'll be.
That's right.
That's the big one next year.
And I've still never been to Las Vegas in my life.
I'm
there you go. One of the last weirdos that hasn't done that. So can't wait to go.
I think that's going to be kind of similar. I think in some ways to when the San Diego were playing in when they moved their first season in Carson, and it was predominantly road fans there, so it really changes the dynamics. So hopefully, only other memory of that is in Dallas in 2014. I know Johnny Harris talks about that a lot, but that was an experience. If you can get a road game, battle red everywhere, and if you get a good following on the road for your team, it's pretty inspiring, I think, and that's kind of the memories and time hopefully we'll be looking forward to this year, Drew. But we'll let you get out here. I really appreciate your time, Drew. Very generous as always. Just to see us out, what's kind of your message for fans? As I said, it's been a tough off season. We're probably in year 0.5 of the rebuild, or as it's been phrased. What would be your message as we start to look ahead and hopefully get past some of the off-field gloom that's kind of always surrounding many people's view of this team?
Well, thank goodness football's back. I'm one of those people that, whether it's mid to late January and the season has ended, or whether it's early January and you're not in the playoffs, the time, like I walk off the field after the last game that the team has played, it's like the worst because I want a game next week. You know, I like when this team plays games and I like the season. And that's what makes my job so much fun. It's the highlights of my job, the season and the games and everything. And so it's back. And I do think, like I said earlier, I think this offensive line is really going to be improved. And I think you're going to see a better defense. And like those two things alone, I think that lends to improvement. So I'm looking for better things in 2021 than what we saw last year. And, you know, that's what I'm after.
Yeah. No, I think it's a new era, I think, or it's about to be a new era in many ways. So we'll see. And I think that's why you play the games, because nobody knows. Anything can happen. So, Drew, thank you very much for your time, mate. Always appreciate it. I'll keep in touch. Hopefully speak to you some point during the season. And enjoy it and enjoy the road trips and a bit of normality of what we all know and love about this team. But thanks, Drew, for your time. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you, man, and I hope we do get back to normal. Hope I can put back a pint finally with you and the boys whenever we're at one of those road games or something. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds good. Excellent, Drew. Thank you very much.
All right, man.
Appreciate it. Speak soon.